Hi, I'm James Brookes, and welcome to From the Factory Floor, a conversational podcast about all things startup and tech, brought to you by the folks at tsf.tech. So, welcome to episode 21 now of From the Factory Floor. As ever, these days I'm joined by Ian. Hi, Ian.
Morning, how are you?
I'm not so bad. It's actually quite a sunny day in Manchester. I don't know what it's like down in Wales.
Yeah, it's not bad actually. Spring is in the air.
This week's episode is all about moving from the corporate world into, obviously, the startup world and the differences that happen. So very pleased today that we can be joined by Ian McCartney from PLYT. Hi, Ian.
Hi.
And at some point, we're going to have to work out how to differentiate between the two Ians on this. It's not a problem we've had yet. So, Ian, so we always let our guests on this podcast introduce themselves. So how about you give us a little sort of 2-minute intro to yourself and PLYT?
Fine, yeah. Hi, I'm Ian McCartney. I'm the co-founder of PLYT, which is a new tutoring marketplace that we hope to launch later this year. I have been in the corporate world previous to this with I left University of Warwick, went to work for a company called Tibbet & Britton, which was then taken over by DHL. So I was there for a few years. And then I joined the Kellogg company in Manchester. And I worked there for quite a few years. I became a supply chain director, ended up on the board of a company in Russia, on the board of a company in Turkey, was involved with all the emerging markets growth, and then left there in 2016 and have been concentrating on my own sort of businesses ever since.
So I think that's probably more experience than most people ever get in the corporate world and the different.
It's very different experiences, some of it as well.
I was gonna say, I mean, working for Kellogg's, I can imagine, was interesting.
Yeah, well, it's a good Kellogg's is a very, very good company, very big presence in the Northwest. Has been around for 100 years in the Northwest. Has been a very big employer, certainly around Trafford Park area. But it's a good company. I enjoyed working for Kellogg's.
Yeah, there's a first piece of serendipity there because, like yourself, I left university and joined a graduate scheme. I joined Pricewaterhouse, and Kellogg's were actually an audit client. And they were a dream audit client because they were so professional in their kind of audit controls and business controls. But I always remember doing a stock take of a grain silo at Bootle at midnight on 31st of December, climbing up this 100-foot, 200-foot grain silo, looking at this maize from Argentina. And the guy who kind of ran up as I kind of walked up with white knuckles, and kind of thinking, this is what my graduate training was all about. But no, they were a great company. And yeah, I had some good experience with my PW hat on, working with Kellogg's on projects and things.
How did you find, obviously, moving from the corporate world into a startup world? I mean, what was actually the driver when you first wanted to change?
Yeah, I mean, I left PW having thought I'd be there for quite a long time, and I was there for 8 years. And it was a combination of things, really. I think they called me in one day and said I had to stop playing rugby and start playing golf. And those of you that know me at 6'3", I'm not kind of really built for golf physically. And so that kind of really peeved me. But also I'd reached a point where I had quite a few ideas of my own. And I was quite happy to kind of forego the certainty in that career path I was on to just go and do my own thing. So a lot of entrepreneurs start, what's the phrase, they've got their own itch to scratch. And for me, it was just a bit of self-belief that I just wanted to see if I could test myself and do this thing on my own. And equally, I was kind of, that comment, start playing golf, stop playing rugby from PW kind of helped me on the way that wasn't an environment I wanted to stay in. But I think just motivating for me was kind of testing myself, to be honest.
I mean, I was only ever very briefly in sort of a larger corporate company. And I had the same sort of reaction when one day I turned up with a black eye and training. Although that said, I do enjoy a game of golf these days. So it's a good balance. So when you obviously moved from when you were in the corporate world to the startup, what is it you actually started doing?
I kind of really took my own skills and my own experience and kind of put my own version of that on it. So I set up my own business advisory company doing business planning, business strategy for startups. And I did that for a couple of years, and I had my own network. And, one of the things is to think about if you are going to make that step from the corporate world to your own venture? Is your experience relevant, and can your existing network help you? And it certainly helped me. I was kind of Manchester-centric and did it for a couple of years. And then I guess, my story is a little bit different because I kind of left PW, did my own thing for a couple of years with 3 other people. And then a company bought that business, and I stayed with that business in the entity, which was a PLC, before leaving that PLC and doing it all over again. So I was, a bit like the Okie-Kokie, one step in, one step out. I think if you are going to do it, I think it's about your own motivation, being confident in that you have got a business idea, you are solving a problem that is real. It's not just a hobby, or it's just not a whim, but making sure your experience is relevant, and can your network help you?
I mean, Ian, how other Ian, seen as our technical issues, seem to have sorted themselves out now. What was it for you? What was your motivation for doing your own, moving from the corporate world?
I'd always had that sort of drive inside me, I think, at a certain way. And I know it sounds odd because I was at a corporate life for so long. So I was at Kellogg's for 20 odd years. But I'd always had that drive to have my own business. And I think I always used to come up with ideas all the time for businesses, for even in ideas for improvements within Kellogg's. I sort of had to be in an environment where I was able to do new things and propose ideas. And I mean, I went to the bank very naively. I went to the bank shortly after I finished university and had this great idea for home delivery on the internet. And nobody had heard of the internet at that time. Went in and said to the bank, took a business plan, said to the bank manager, right, here you go, here's a business plan. And he said, I'll put in what you put in. So I'm happy to back you, and we'll go 50-50. And I said, basically, I've got enough for a sandwich. That was basically it. So it was one of those things. I kind of came out thinking, all right, so I need more than just an idea. I need more than this. So then I kind of realized I was a little bit green and needed a bit of experience. So, but I've always had that inside me. And even at Kellogg's, for instance, I was in the mainstream business for a long time. So Kellogg's it's got a very powerful UK business and a reasonably strong European business. But in the emerging markets where I spent the last sort of 10, 15 years of my career with them, that was all new and fresh. And you were kind of like let to go and left to your own devices. You could almost operate as setting up a small to medium-sized business within a large corporate, which really suited me. So we were going out looking at acquisitions, we were looking at mergers, we were growing a very small business into something larger. So it kind of suited me within a larger corporate environment, being involved in that side of the business. I think I struggled with the mainstream business a little bit because I wouldn't say that I was, a safe pair of hands to do a lot of the jobs. Some people are really suited to that, and they like to know what they're going to do tomorrow. They like to know, that they've got a salary at the end of the corporate life suits them, and they're very good at it. For me, it wasn't that. I didn't really have that same feeling. I wanted to do new things all the time. So my story of how I actually left, though, is a little bit more sort of complex because I've been thinking about, as I said, I've been thinking about ideas. I actually got in 2008. I was actually bitten by a tick and went on to develop Lyme disease. But I sort of battled on with it, and I was traveling quite a lot at the time. So I was going to Russia and I was going to Turkey, traveling quite a bit. I struggled for about 3 or 4 years, and eventually had to take time off in 2012. And it came to a head when I remember I was in Russia, in an office in Russia, lying on the bathroom floor, thinking I just can't carry on doing this. Something needs to give. So I stopped. And a few years earlier, I'd made a board game for my kids, a maths board game for my kids that they'd played, and we'd all played together as a family, in fact, and they'd improved. And we were asked by their school, to send it in. And we'd done nothing about it. I wasn't a board game designer, didn't really have the time, and it was a sort of coffee-stained piece of laminated floor, so it didn't look particularly impressive anyway. So I had this time off work and thought I need to do something. So I made some prototypes. Lisa, my wife, took them into school, and before we knew it, we had kids asking where they could buy it. We had the school asking, sort of, every school and every child in this school could have this game, and we thought, well, it's helped our kids so much. I wonder whether or not we can actually make this for somebody else. So I, in my infinite wisdom, started to look at the idea of producing a board game, and I never forget that I made a decision, and I'd never met. I mean, I know we've been working together since lockdown, and we've never actually met physically. Well, I have history of that because I found a game producer. There aren't many people who develop games, board games. And I found a producer in America who used Hong Kong to produce. Never met them, spoken to them on the phone a couple of times, and I agreed to basically invest our life savings in a container load of games. And I'd never met these people, and so off it went. And I think, I was obviously using that whole process as a way to help me get better. It gave me a motivation, something to get up for every day. So that happened. We had these games. The games started to sell, and over time, I started to realise actually we can make a real difference with this. We can help kids. I was in a boardroom one minute. I remember being with a wife one day and saying to her that a couple of years ago I was actually in a board meeting in Istanbul, and we had a cruise down the Bosphorus. And I said, now I'm sitting in a small plastic chair in a primary school with 7-year-old kids opposite me. I said how life has changed. And she pointed out to me at the time, though, she said, 2 years ago, you wouldn't have been able to even sit in this chair in a primary school because you were that ill. So, everything was in perspective. But we realised that we could do something. And the seed was sown that almost that was the opportunity for me to really go on my own and, work out a way in which we could help kids and help education. And that's where this business idea started from. I was supposed to have 3 months off, and it turned into 2.5 years. And by the time I went back, that motivation for the corporate life had gone. I felt that I had more to give somewhere else, and I had much more passion about what I was doing in the education side than I did it in the corporate side.
There's 2 or 3 really key things there which resonate with me. And obviously, I know your story as we've been working together. But I think just taking a step back in terms of corporate life, and I think one of the things I'd like to get through on this podcast to people that are looking at this as an opportunity. Entrepreneurship and startups are not for everyone. You've got to have the right mindset. You've got to have the right motivation. And your point, which kind of echoes what I said earlier about the experience. You were working in an organisation that gave you that freedom of thinking, to be able to flex your ideas around innovation. And I think that then gives you that spark and that spirit to know that actually that's what one of your skill sets is. A startup is about new ideas, trying new things, experimenting. Not every corporate gives you that. And the other thing as well, your personal journey, and really thanks for sharing that. That was kind of the pivot. It was the catalyst. A lot of people who unfortunately, get a crisis in their corporate career and then are forced to go and do something different. You kind of reacted to that in a really positive way, which again is that spirit of endeavour and self-belief. But the couple of words you've used there, yes, it was a pivot, and you took that decision to get up and do something, but you had a passion for it, and you used the words there, I can make a difference. And again, I think those are key tenets of startup founders. People who've got a passion, want to make a difference, and your kind of journey and what you're trying to do in education, again, that's the driver. So I think it is about opportunity. It's about that self-drive, but it's about this has to be a passion of yours, and you've got that in spades.
I think you're absolutely right. The corporate life suits some people more than others, and corporations are all very different. So it's not saying that one company is the same model as everything. Different companies have different ways of operating, can give you different bits of freedom. One thing I always think though is there seems to be this thing about entrepreneurs being very young, fresh out of university or a few years experience. I also think that having been through the corporate experiences that I've been through, that's put me in a lot better position now to put into practice my ideas and have more chance. I've got more confidence in my ability to execute what I want to do, having had the experiences that I've had. And I think that's a very positive thing to have had as well.
I think one of the interesting things you also said, Ian, was around, obviously, when you mentioned about going into the bank and, obviously moving from something like a corporate to startup is some of the challenges around doing that and understanding those. I mean, Ian, I assume you had something similar but also different in terms of the challenges you faced moving from that corporate world into the startup world.
One of the initial challenges you face is that, certainly in my case anyway, you were in this corporate world, you're being paid a good salary, comfortable environment. The older you get, the harder these things become to leave in a way, because you get used to that sort of lifestyle. People thought I was absolutely bonkers. Mm-hmm. So, you're a director of this company. How can you possibly think of leaving to go and start up something that's got nothing? How can you do that? But from my point of view, I couldn't help not but do it. It was the most natural thing in the world to want to do, because I thought I could make it work and make a difference. So I think overcoming the barriers of the people who think you're nuts is quite a big one. And then I think it's about, certainly for this side, it's finding people who believe as much as you do in that idea and are willing to help you and back you, and because you can't do it on your own. I think, again, throughout my sort of corporate life, I've realised that the people I work with are just as important as any idea I've got. You need to have good people. You need to work with good people to make things happen. So I think getting yourself in a position of, people who are willing to help you financially and with just ideas, someone to, a soundboard, all of that's really important.
I think a couple of things there, Ian, strike a chord with my experience as well. I left Pricewaterhouse on the 31st of December, and on the 6th of January, James was born. So I kind of salary and career, and James arrived with additional responsibility on that. But the difference, I think, for me, and kind of, some of the qualities I've seen working with you, is around perseverance. I think when you're in a corporate, you've got resources, you've got a team of people, you've got an infrastructure. When you're going out on your own, you've got to do it for yourself. So perseverance and tenacity. And obviously, you've walked away from a safety net as well. You've got more accountability. And the thing as well, which always struck me, and at the outset of this podcast, James asked, what was our motivation? Lots of people start this out by saying, I want to be my own boss. And I've never got that. Because for me, it's about building something. It's about having that passion and doing something with that innovation and drive. But yeah, perseverance and building that network and the team of people around you, and just doing something for yourself. And that drive is very, very different. And again, not everyone's got that. Not everyone's got that.
No.
And it isn't right for everybody. I think, there's all the kind of the media and the television programs, Dragon's Den and things like that, The Apprentice. Entrepreneurship and doing your own thing is not right for everyone. You do have to look inside yourself. And for me, the driver is passion and wanting to make a difference. And, people who want to stay in corporate life, fantastic. I would never negate that, but it's just not right for everybody.
I totally agree with you. It's not right for everybody. And also, it's not, I sometimes feel, I remember going, when I was at Kellogg's, it was a very big company. I remember we used to go and look at acquiring businesses of all sort of different sizes. And some of the people within Kellogg's, because it's a multi-billion-dollar company, some of the people almost thought that they were somehow better than the people who we were buying, who'd set up their own businesses, and we were now looking at buying them because I was part of a big company and you were only a small company. And that simply wasn't the case. These guys had done something absolutely fantastic to create a business from nothing. But reversing that as well, those owners and those business owners, creators, weren't necessarily right for the corporate world. There are horses for courses, and some people can be, the first to admit, there's a hell of a lot of people who would be in the corporate world who'd be better in the corporate world than I would be. And vice versa. I may be better at certain things than them in the world that I've now chosen to be in. It is, not everything is right for everybody.
Obviously, how did you balance that with having more responsibility in terms of a personal life, and balance that with then starting your own venture?
It's a challenge, and it is a very different challenge, because I think while you're kind of very respectful and you're engaged and you're motivated while you're doing a kind of job with a corporate that's kind of got structure and you are on a career path there and you're focused on that, doing your own thing, you are more naturally more emotionally attached and do want to put more time in because you care about it more. You're more driven, and success is more personal. So you do need to set some boundaries. And I've always been fortunate I've been able to do that. That's kind of, Susan's always been very supportive, but you do have to kind of invest in the relationship as a dad and a husband as much as you're investing in the relationship with your startup and your startup team and your customers. You just need to set some boundaries, James. And at times I didn't always get that right, but you need to kind of be really clear about family time. And equally, you are doing it for yourself. So, as you know, I watching you play rugby midweek was always one of those things, with Katie and hockey. So working for yourself, you do have that flexibility. and you just need to get the balance right. What's important to you? And working for yourself is all about working for yourself and doing that thing, but not letting that become an overwhelming burden on the family. Just making sure that the investment in the relationships to those around you is tempered as well.
But it's like, I think going back to what you said there, and obviously the challenges is it's not that it's something that's not doable. It is just finding those rules, finding those ways of managing yourself, which is something that ultimately you have to do as a founder. You have to be able to manage yourself because no one else is going to tell you what to do.
So one of the key things I learned about corporate life was the importance of having a team and being in a team of motivated, talented people. And in your startup, you have to realize you can't do everything yourself. One of the important challenges when you're launching your startup is to build that team and get that team engaged, get them bought in, and bring the right skills in. So you balance the time by bringing people in and not kidding yourself that you can do everything.
No, and I mean, like you say, it's something you have to balance and you're getting the right people in. I mean, Ian, I don't know what your opinion is on that.
Everything is about getting the right people. And I think it's a hard thing to do. I think delegation can sometimes be a bit of a challenge in a new business because you go from almost like doing everything for a small period of time and so probably not doing everything particularly well. And then you bring people in and you have to delegate things. I think one of the difficulties as a startup you sometimes have is you're not able to afford to get the people that you really, really want because you can't afford to do it. And as a result, you're kind of still having to do part of the things that you don't really have the time to do. And I think the people side is such a massive thing. Getting the right people, having the right investment to get the right people is a huge thing. And in the long run, I think it saves tons of stuff. But you definitely can't do it on your own as an entrepreneur, as a single person or a couple of people founders.
When it comes to hiring the right people, so you're right at the start of the journey, and obviously next week's episode might go into a little bit more of the start of the journey, obviously funding that and to get the right people. In both of your experiences, what was that first person that you brought on board or first person that you engaged with that really helped you? And what was it that made you choose that particular person or role over another?
It's a very difficult hire, but it's a critical hire. The first hire, you're wanting them to kind of share your passion. They've got the fire in their belly. They believe in it as much as you do. And I guess with what I've learned over kind of the last 10 years in doing this is you do hire for shared values and shared perspective. So they're not going to be as fired up as you are. Obviously, it's your idea, it's your baby, but you want them to share in that, in the vision and the values and the beliefs. So there's the type of person, the character, how you communicate. Have you got share a sense of humour? You've got to connect on a very personal level because you're going to have a very intimate relationship with them. I think in skill sets, it's been absolutely brutal about yourself. What are you good at? What are you not good at? What do you enjoy doing? What do you not enjoy doing? What's the business need? And I have a lot of hard and soft metrics around that. My hard metrics are I kind of throw them the deck and get them to present to me as if I was a customer. Can they actually explain my story? What they're like thinking on their feet? Have they got the mindset to work in a startup? It's not going to be linear. It's going to be rough and tumble. There's going to be good days, bad days. How agile are they as people in their mindset? And then it's about trust. So I have a very simple, but some people may think this is a bit futile, but I ask them to walk my dog. If they can walk my dog, they're a dog lover, which means they get me. But also they've kind of got a degree of humanity and warmth about them, and they'll share a bit about their own personality and their own kind of inner being as well. So you want people who've got great skills, great motivations, but they kind of got to be your sort of person as well.
Although you have to be careful walking Molly around if there's any Alsatians around.
Yeah.
Or if anyone, or if the person you're hiring is called Siri, which is a video that we shared a very long time ago now. But Ian, what about from your side? Obviously, when you were,
I think it's there's an interesting difference between hiring for a startup and hiring for a corporate. And I think for me, one of the biggest things was for a corporate, you hire people for a job, a specific job, and you kind of know what they're going to do in that job, and they know what they're going to do in a job. In a startup, I think you're hiring more on cultural fit and personality and can they add value? Because you don't really know what the job's going to be, and the job can change massively. What you want is someone who's going to sort of support you. And if the business goes a little bit left, they come with you. If it goes a bit right, they come with you. And it's just so less defined. I think, to me, there's a lot more personal, cultural fit, those kind of things than there is necessarily when I was hiring on the corporate thing. The skill sets is more corporate-y and the personality is more for startups.
Yeah, definitely.
If someone from a corporate was listening to this podcast and was really thinking about scratching that itch, doing their own thing, what would your key piece of advice be to them?
I don't think there's one single piece of advice, if I'm honest, and without wanting to grab the microphone. I think that there's probably three things. Can you envisage a life where you are working initially on your own or with just a handful of people where you're actually responsible for everything? The whole support network goes away, the safety net goes away. Can you imagine that first Friday of your first month when the salary check doesn't go into your bank account? So can you walk away from that security and safety? Secondly, have you really got the motivation and the mindset of being an innovator? You can't just cut and paste somebody else's idea. You've got to actually have that spark of creative thinking and making and doing something different. And then thirdly, I think it's to Ian's point about you've got to want to make a difference, because it's not about the money. It's not about the money in the first 2, 3, 4, 5 years even. It's about making something that's built on your passion, that will monetize and will reward you. But making a difference has to be the driver. It's not about the money. So don't see all these entrepreneurs as kind of, right, get rich, I can be my own boss. You've got to have a driver to do it.
Mr. McCartney, how about from your side? What would your advice be to someone?
I think I sort of echo the last point really more than any other. I think you have to have the right motivation to do it. And I think that if the motivation is financial, it might be a struggle when things go badly. And there's one thing that sort of undeniably I think happens to everybody is things don't go as you intend or as planned. And you will have setbacks, and you'll have a lot of setbacks, and you'll have a lot of, soul searching. If you don't have that strong sort of like motivation that's sort of underlying, that's more than money, then the chances are you'll give up. I know it's not quite the right analogy, but I remember with my sort of son, when he was at school, everybody was sort of talking about, everyone's making millions on YouTube. So everybody at school had a YouTube channel. Everyone's making millions on TikTok. So everybody at school has a TikTok channel because they think all they need to do is just do that, and they'll make loads and loads of money. If the motivation's money, but they've all given up. They all give up within about 3 weeks because it's hard. And I think that to me is if the motivation's money on its own, it's a struggle. If the motivations are right and you're doing something you're passionate about, that you want to do, that means that when you have those setbacks, you can still get up and do it tomorrow, then I think you've got a chance.
No, I think that's, as someone who has occasionally done YouTube videos, it is actually quite difficult. And obviously seeing founders from different backgrounds, like we spoke to Tom a couple of weeks ago from FreeUp, and obviously his journey was from academia, which again was a very different mindset into sort of the business focus. I think it is doing it for the right reasons is always the most important thing, and wanting to make a difference, like you did, Ian, with the wanting to help kids effectively and help them learn and progress through their learning journey. So I think in general, I think we've got to the end as much as the internet allows. So thank you very much, both.
Yeah, just before we go, Ian, do you just want to give your contact details so anyone who is interested in knowing more about PLYT can get in touch?
Sure, yeah. It's Ian.McCartney. My email is ian.mccartney@plytime. That's PLYTIME.com. You can read more about PLYtime at www.plytime.com. You can call me if you want to on 07538432406.
Thank you very much, Ian. So look forward to speaking to you on Monday about the project. And I think next week, obviously, Mr. Brookes, you're back again.
Indeed. Public demands, Black Penny.
I think we'll have to give you the official title now, just of co-host rather than just guest these days. But next week we're almost progressing slightly further along that starting journey and looking at due diligence that investors want to do. And I think we're bringing Gavin along with us for that one, aren't we, Ian?
Yeah, Gavin Bell from Maven Capital Partners in Manchester.
Fantastic. I'm sure a very interesting conversation. So once again, thank you very much both, and I look forward to catching up with you both soon.
I think that just about wraps things up here. If you have any thoughts or questions on anything we said today, get in touch, whether that be through our Twitter @RealTSF or email at hello@startupfactory.tech, or feel free to drop in for a coffee and a chat. As ever, thanks for listening.